If you've ever felt trapped by a bad habit, smoking, procrastinating, overeating, what if I told you you're not battling behavior, but an assumption you unknowingly accepted? Neville Goddard taught, your assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact. Bad habits defy logic because your brain craves immediate rewards over future benefits. Willpower alone fails because habits live deep in the subconscious, beyond the reach of sheer effort. Today you'll learn how to dissolve bad habits by shifting identity, not through struggle but through assumption, replacing the old with the new, effortlessly and naturally. Let's begin. Bad habits are assumptions in action. What if every habit you struggle with is nothing more than a story you keep telling yourself? Neville Goddard said, change your conception of yourself, and you will automatically change the world in which you live. Habits are not chains. They are assumptions. Ideas we accepted about who we are repeated until they became automatic. When you say, I'm a night owl, or I'm bad at exercising, you are not describing facts. You are declaring assumptions, reinforcing them with every repetition. Imagine your mind as a record player. The groove that forms a habit plays over and over, not because it's the only music available, but because it's the path worn deepest by repetition. Yet just as a needle can be lifted and placed onto a new track, you can choose a new assumption to play. Reflection. What quiet labels have you accepted that keep you tied to the very behaviors you wish to outgrow? Neville's principle is clear. You are not the habit. You are the one assuming it into being. Shift the assumption, and the behavior must follow. If habits are just assumptions, why do they feel so stubborn, so resistant to change? The answer lies deep within the way your brain is designed. Willpower alone often fails because habits are stored in the basal ganglia, the part of the brain responsible for automatic behavior. The conscious mind, where willpower lives, is like a candle in the wind, compared to the solid mountain of unconscious patterns. Neville Goddard emphasized, an assumption, though false if persisted in, will harden into fact. The mind returns again and again to what is familiar, not to what is good, but to what has been assumed as true. Add to this the subtle sabotage of cognitive distortions. Just this once. I'll start Monday. Today doesn't really count. These small lies reinforce the old assumption every time you believe them. Trying harder often leads to frustration because it addresses the surface, not the cause. The problem isn't that you're weak, it's that you're trying to fight an inner story while still believing in its truth. Reflection. In what moments do you hear yourself justifying old habits? And what would it feel like to no longer argue for your limitations? When you change the assumption, the battle dissolves. Now, you will learn how to end habits in the Neville way. In Neville Goddard's teachings, there is no place for fighting against the old. There is only movement into the new. He reminds us, you are already that which you want to be. You must now appropriate it mentally by assuming the feeling of your wish fulfilled. This is the heart of substitution. Most people fail to change because they attempt elimination. They try to rip out the old habit by force. But when you remove a behavior without planting something in its place, you create an emotional and mental vacuum. And nature, as we know, abhors a vacuum. Without something new to fill the gap, the old habit returns, often with greater force. Think about someone who decides to stop smoking. They tell themselves, I will not smoke, I must not smoke. Yet throughout the day, their mind circles around cigarettes. They are trying to not do something, but they have not assumed the feeling of being a healthy, free non-smoker. There is no new mental garden blooming, only the barren soil of resistance. Substitution asks a different question. It does not ask, how do I stop this bad habit? It asks, what new identity, feeling, or behavior am I ready to assume in its place? When you shift your focus to the new assumption, the old habit fades naturally. There is no internal war. There is no need to strain and resist. There is only the persistent choice to dwell in a new state of being. Let's take a practical example. Imagine that each evening after a stressful day, you find yourself overeating. The trigger is stress. The reward is comfort. If you attempt to simply eliminate the behavior, to tell yourself, no more eating at night, you are fighting a losing battle. The mind still seeks comfort. The emotional cue has not changed. But what if, instead, you substitute? You create a vivid, living image of yourself finding comfort in a different way, through stretching, deep breathing, or sitting in stillness while imagining your life unfolding exactly as you desire. You could end the day not by battling hunger, but by feeding your imagination. The substitution satisfies the same cue. the need for comfort, but through a behavior aligned with your higher self. Neville would instruct you not merely to think this substitution but to feel it real. Close your eyes and dwell in the feeling of peace, fulfillment, and self-respect. The more vivid the inner experience, the more real it becomes, and the more your outer behavior must conform to your new assumption. In a lecture from 1951, Neville said, "The drama of life is psychological. The whole vast world is a response to your inner drama. This inner drama is what determines whether habits hold power over you or dissolve effortlessly." Substitution also allows you to move beyond the cycle of self-criticism. When you fail at resisting a bad habit, you often fall into guilt and shame, reinforcing the assumption that you are weak or broken. But when you substitute instead of resist, you are not judging yourself for old patterns. You are simply stepping into a new role, without needing to punish the old one. Think of a stage actor. When they finish one performance, they do not stand on stage arguing with the last character they played. They simply step into a new costume, a new mindset, a new role. The same is true for you. Your job is not to defeat the old character. It is to stop playing that part and assume a new one. Reflection. What behavior could you plant today that would not just oppose the old habit, but make it unnecessary? Could you replace endless scrolling on your phone with 5 minutes of vivid visualization? Could you substitute the urge to criticize yourself with a quiet affirmation of your chosen identity? Could you transform nervous snacking into a habit of journaling your successes? Remember, you are not trying to earn your freedom from bad habits. You are claiming it by assuming now that you are the person who naturally lives in a new way. Neville would say, claim it boldly, even if reason and the senses deny it. Your senses may still show you the old patterns. Your mind may whisper, "You've always done it this way." But your task is simple. Persist in the feeling of the new assumption, regardless of appearances. Consistency is key. Each time you substitute, each time you choose the new feeling over the old reaction, you deepen the groove of the new track in your mind. Soon, the new behavior becomes automatic. It feels natural, inevitable, easy. This is not about forcing change. It is about surrendering to a higher vision of yourself. You are not erasing who you are. You are revealing the deeper truth of who you have always been. So today, ask yourself, if I were already free, already whole, already living as my ideal self, what would I feel? What would I do instead? And then, live from that answer, not just once, but persistently, until it hardens into fact. You do not fight the darkness. You turn on the light. You do not wrestle the old assumption into submission. You assume the new, and in doing so, you set yourself free. Neville Goddard insisted that you must persist in the feeling of your wish fulfilled, not occasionally, but faithfully. This persistence is made easier when the world around you and the small structures of your daily life reflect the assumption you have chosen. Transformation does not happen through random effort. It happens through consistent inner and outer alignment. Let's now explore 5 strategies, each a practical extension of Neville's deeper principles. Strategy 1. Environmental design. Neville Goddard taught that everything you experience outwardly is a reflection of your inner assumptions. The world outside mirrors the world you carry within, but equally, your outer world, your environment, can reinforce or weaken your inner state. When you are seeking to embody a new identity, to leave behind old habits, and assume a greater version of yourself, your environment must reflect that shift. Otherwise, you find yourself constantly battling old triggers, making the assumption of your new state more difficult. Environmental design means shaping your surroundings to make your desired behavior effortless and your unwanted behavior inconvenient. It is not about forcing change through willpower. It is about preparing the field so that the seeds you plant have room to grow. Suppose you want to end the habit of endless snacking late at night. If your kitchen is filled with chips, cookies, and candy within arm's reach, you're asking yourself to live in contradiction, to hold the assumption of health while your environment screams the old story. But if you redesign your environment by clearing your kitchen of processed snacks, preparing fresh fruit, drinking herbal tea at night, you are making it easy to live from your new assumption. I am a person who nourishes my body with care. Neville said, an assumption, though false if persisted in, will harden into fact. Your environment can either nourish that persistence or erode it. Environmental design also means creating visual cues that remind you of your new self. A vision board, a single affirmation placed on your desk, a photo that symbolizes freedom or strength, These are not mere decorations. They are anchors that call you back to your assumption every time your senses try to pull you back into the old. Reflection. What part of your environment today still speaks the language of your old assumptions? And what small but meaningful change could you make that would affirm the truth of your new self? The world you experience tomorrow begins with what you assume today and what you prepare to receive. Before we move on, pause for a moment and ask yourself, what small change could you make right now that your future self would thank you for? If you are serious about shifting from old patterns to your true potential, check the pinned comment below. I've left something there that will help you take what you are learning today and make it a living part of your everyday life. It's simple, but it can change everything if you apply it. Now let's move into the next strategy and see how preparing your mind for action can make all the difference. Strategy 2. Implementation intentions. Neville Goddard taught that the subconscious mind accepts as true what we feel and prepare for with conviction. Preparation is a form of assumption. It is a silent declaration. This is who I am, and this is how I move through life. Implementation intentions are a powerful modern reflection of this truth. They are simple, predetermined if-then statements that create an automatic response to situations that might otherwise trigger an old habit. By deciding ahead of time how you will act, you assume the identity of someone who chooses consciously, not reactively. For example, if I feel the urge to procrastinate, then I will set a timer for 5 minutes and begin the task anyway. Or, if I feel anxious at night, then I will take 3 slow, deep breaths and visualize myself at peace. These statements are not mere tactics. They are expressions of your new assumption, that you are someone who responds with awareness and strength. By preparing your mind in advance, you step out of the chaos of emotional reaction and into the calm certainty of chosen identity. Neville said, "Faith is loyalty to the unseen reality." When you set an implementation intention, you are practicing loyalty to your unseen reality, the reality where you have already overcome the habit, already become the version of yourself you have chosen. Without this preparation, old triggers easily pull you back into old assumptions. The mind, left to its own momentum, seeks the familiar. But when you prepare in advance, you disrupt the old pattern before it can take hold. Reflection. What common situation tempts you to revert to an old habit? And what if-then plan could you create that would immediately align you with your higher self? The future is not something you encounter. It is something you prepare for, consciously, deliberately, and with faith. Strategy 3. The replacement rule. In Neville Goddard's teachings, the focus is always creation, never destruction. He reminds us, man moves in a world that is nothing more than his consciousness objectified. To change the world you experience, including your habits, you must shift consciousness, not fight circumstances. The replacement rule flows directly from this principle. You do not break habits by trying to erase them. You break habits by replacing them with new behaviors that align with the identity you have chosen to assume. Every habit, no matter how damaging, fulfills a need. Smoking may create a feeling of control. Procrastination may offer temporary relief from fear. Overeating may provide comfort against emotional discomfort. If you attempt to simply remove the habit, the need remains unmet. But if you replace the behavior with a new one that satisfies the same emotional cue, in a way that honors your higher self, you dissolve the old habit naturally without struggle. Imagine someone who uses alcohol to unwind after a long day. Rather than focusing on stopping drinking, which often amplifies the craving, they could introduce a replacement ritual, an evening walk while visualizing the life they desire, or a relaxing tea ceremony that symbolizes peace and mastery. The need for relaxation remains fulfilled, but the behavior now aligns with the new assumption. I am someone who honors and nourishes my mind and body. Neville would urge you not to merely change outer actions but to feel yourself into the new state. Feel the satisfaction, the peace, the joy of fulfilling your needs in a higher, purer way. Then act from that feeling, not from fear or resistance. Reflection. What emotional need is your old habit trying to meet? And what beautiful, life-affirming behavior could meet that need even more deeply? Remember, you do not destroy by force. You transform by creation. You replace the old with the living reality of your assumed ideal. Strategy 4. Habit stacking. Neville Goddard taught that repetition of assumption leads to manifestation. Persisting in the feeling of the wish fulfilled brings about its external reality. Habit stacking is a method to anchor that repetition into the fabric of your daily life without effort or strain. Habit stacking involves linking a new desired behavior to an existing habit that already runs automatically. You build the new action upon the foundation of something familiar, allowing your new assumption to take root naturally, almost invisibly. Consider how automatic brushing your teeth has become. You do not wrestle with yourself each morning or night about whether to do it. It simply happens, flowing from a long-established pattern. Now imagine if, immediately after brushing your teeth, you spent 2 minutes vividly imagining yourself living your ideal life, or affirming silently, "I am confident, I am disciplined, I am free." By pairing the new behavior with an existing habit, you bypass resistance. You allow your new identity to become as automatic and natural as the old habits once were. Neville would tell you, persist in the assumption, and it will harden into fact. Habit stacking makes that persistence part of your rhythm of being, not an added burden or obligation. This method works because it honors the principle that consciousness moves most easily along channels already established. By attaching your new action to a familiar one, you build momentum without relying on willpower. Reflection. What daily habits already exist in your life, however small? Where could you stack a new assumption, a new behavior, a new inner declaration? Perhaps after closing your laptop at the end of the workday, you pause for 1 minute to feel grateful for your successes. Perhaps after pouring your morning coffee, you affirm, "Today I live from the fullness of my ideal self." Through habit stacking, your new assumptions become not occasional efforts, but effortless truths lived daily. The difference between wishing for change and embodying change is often measured in the small, consistent choices you weave into your life. Strategy 5. The 10-minute rule. Neville Goddard taught that when you assume a state, you must persist in it, regardless of appearances. Do not condition your assumption, he said. Persist in the feeling of the wish fulfilled and it will harden into fact. The 10-minute rule is a direct and powerful way to practice this persistence, especially when old desires or impulses attempt to pull you back into a state you no longer wish to occupy. When an urge arises, the sudden desire to smoke, procrastinate, lash out, or indulge any old habit, it is not an indication of failure. It is merely the echo of a state you once embodied. It is the momentum of an old assumption seeking confirmation, one last attempt to reassert itself through your attention and action. The natural reaction is to obey it without thinking. This obedience keeps the old pattern alive. But when you apply the 10-minute rule, you consciously intervene. You create a sacred space between impulse and response, a space where transformation becomes possible. The practice is simple yet profound. When the urge strikes, pause for 10 minutes before taking any action. During that pause, shift your focus entirely to your chosen identity. Feel yourself already free. Feel the satisfaction, the peace, the strength that comes from being the person you have decided to be. You do not fight the urge. You transcend it by no longer identifying with it. Consider this example. A person has assumed the identity of someone who values their health and vitality. One evening, after a stressful day, the old impulse to binge eat returns with force. Rather than rushing to the kitchen and acting automatically, they pause. For 10 minutes, they close their eyes, breathe deeply, and imagine themselves already living in their ideal body. Energetic, disciplined, joyful, they feel the pride of being aligned with their true self. By the end of the 10 minutes, the emotional urgency that once felt overwhelming has softened, often disappearing altogether. This is not mere distraction. This is realignment. It is a conscious return to the assumption of the wish fulfilled. It is an act of creative faith. Neville emphasized that faith is loyalty to the unseen reality. When you pause for 10 minutes and dwell in your chosen identity, you are being loyal, not to the evidence of your senses, not to the old story, but to the unseen truth you have claimed as your own. The power of the 10-minute rule lies in what it teaches you about yourself. You realize that you are not your cravings. You are not your old emotions. You are the one who observes them, who chooses where to place attention, who determines which assumptions will harden into fact. Many fear that pausing will make the urge stronger. In reality, the opposite occurs. When you resist or suppress an urge, you give it more power through struggle. But when you acknowledge it, allow it to rise, and then gently turn your focus elsewhere, you rob it of its authority. You are saying without words, "I am no longer loyal to this pattern. I am loyal to the life I am creating." The 10-minute rule also builds emotional resilience. Each time you delay action and choose your higher self, You strengthen the neural pathways of your new identity. You create a body memory, a mental pattern, and an emotional rhythm that favors patience, awareness, and mastery. Over time, the urges themselves diminish, not because you have fought them into submission, but because you have consistently refused to feed them with your energy and attention. You have starved them by no longer living from the old state. Reflection. Think back to a time when you acted impulsively and later wished you had paused. What might have shifted if you had given yourself 10 minutes to breathe, to imagine, to feel the truth of your chosen self? The moments when you feel the strongest temptation are not signs of failure. They are the final tests of loyalty to your assumption. They are opportunities disguised as challenges. Neville would urge you not to condemn yourself for these moments, but to see them as gifts. Each pause is a brick laid on the foundation of your new life. Each act of loyalty to your vision is a silent command to the universe. This is who I am now. Practical ways to use the 10-minute rule effectively. Set a timer. When the urge arises, literally set a timer for 10 minutes. Commit to staying with yourself, with your vision, until the timer ends. Prepare a visualization. Have a clear scene already in mind, a scene that implies the fulfillment of your desire, so that when the urge comes, you know exactly where to turn your attention. Anchor in feeling. Do not just think about your ideal self. Feel as though you are already living that life. Immerse yourself in the sensory richness of it. Affirm, silently. Repeat a simple, powerful affirmation that anchors you. I am already free. I act from love, not fear. I persist in my highest assumption. Celebrate the pause. At the end of 10 minutes, whether the urge remains or fades, congratulate yourself. Every act of persistence is a victory, regardless of how dramatic or small it feels. The 10-minute rule is not about perfection. It is about cultivation. It is about growing the habit of pausing, the habit of remembering, the habit of living from the end. Over time, 10 minutes may become 5, then 3. Then the urge may not even arise at all. The old state will no longer have a home within you. As Neville wrote, the world is yourself pushed out. When you master your internal states, your external world must conform. It cannot do otherwise. In every moment of craving, you are given a sacred choice, to feed the past or to water the future. The 10-minute rule offers you the space to make that choice consciously, creatively, and powerfully. You are not fighting the old. You are standing in the truth of the new. You are not delaying your gratification. You are advancing your freedom. And so with every 10 minutes you reclaim, you step deeper into the reality of the self you have chosen to be. This is how transformation happens, not through force but through unwavering loyalty to the vision that is already yours. Relapse is feedback, not failure. One of the most misunderstood moments on the journey of transformation is relapse, the sudden return to an old behavior you thought you had left behind. It feels like betrayal. It feels like defeat. But through the lens of Neville Goddard's teachings, relapse is neither. It is feedback, not failure. Neville often emphasized, persist, persist, persist in the assumption, and it will become a fact. He never said the path would be free of appearances that contradict your desire. In fact, he taught that persistence, despite appearances, is the very act that crystallizes the new reality into form. Relapse is simply the body's memory of an old state momentarily reasserting itself. It is the echo of a belief you once held, a reflex that arises not because you are broken, but because the old groove is still fading. Your task is not to condemn yourself when this happens. Your task is to see it clearly, to use it as data, and to immediately reaffirm your chosen state. Imagine you are learning a new language. At first, when you speak, you occasionally slip into your native tongue. Is that failure? No. It is proof that you are on the journey of rewiring your mind. Every mistake becomes an opportunity to strengthen the new language, the new way of being. In the same way, when you relapse into an old habit, it is not the behavior itself that matters most. What matters is how you interpret and respond to it. If you fall into guilt, shame, or despair, you re-enter the old assumption, I am powerless, I am unchanged. But if you see the slip for what it is, a moment of feedback showing you where persistence is still needed, you remain loyal to your new identity. Neville taught that assumption is not proven by avoiding challenges, but by mastering them internally. When the outer world, including your own actions, seems to deny your assumption, your duty is to act as though it were impossible to fail. This means immediately, after any relapse, returning to the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Not tomorrow, not after hours of self-recrimination. Now, you say within yourself, "This slip does not define me. I remain who I have chosen to be." You feel yourself already embodying the new state. You claim your ideal identity again, stronger, deeper, and with greater conviction. This approach transforms relapse from a reason for discouragement into a tool for acceleration. Each time you return swiftly to your chosen assumption, you teach your subconscious mind, "This is the reality to which I am loyal." You rewire your identity not through the absence of error, but through the immediacy of return. Reflection. What if you viewed every slip not as a failure but as a doorway to deeper persistence? What if each mistake was simply another opportunity to reaffirm the life you are creating? Relapse becomes dangerous only when it leads to identification. If you assume that the slip means you are the old self again, you prolong the cycle. But if you assume instead that the slip was a momentary forgetting, easily corrected by renewed focus, you collapse the power of the old assumption. Neville's work is filled with reminders that the feeling of the wish fulfilled must be the constant inner environment, not the fleeting response to outer validation. Relapse tests whether you truly understand this principle. Practical ways to reframe relapse. Pause and observe. Instead of reacting emotionally, take a breath. See the behavior without judgment. Affirm your chosen identity. Immediately remind yourself, "I am free. I am whole. I am already the embodiment of my desire." Revise the moment. Use Neville's technique of revision. In your imagination, replay the moment differently. See yourself acting from the new state. Feel it as real. Celebrate the return. Instead of lamenting the fall, celebrate the speed with which you return to your chosen self. Strengthen your vision. Spend extra time dwelling in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Let the experience deepen your assumption, not weaken it. Relapse, then, becomes part of the journey, not a deviation from it. It becomes a refining fire, burning away the last attachments to the old identity. Neville's teachings always point us back to inner authority. He said, "There is no one to change but self." This includes how you interpret your own missteps. You do not need to change the world to succeed. You need only to change the way you see yourself, again and again, until the change within you becomes undeniable without. So when you stumble, and you might, remember, you are not starting over. You are building momentum. Each conscious return to your true self is a triumph, invisible perhaps to the senses, but monumental in spirit. Persistence in assumption is not perfection in behavior. It is loyalty to the unseen reality, no matter what appears. It is the quiet, steady insistence, "I am who I have decided to be." And so, relapse becomes not an ending, but another opportunity to practice mastery, another chance to affirm, "I remain faithful to my vision, no matter what." This is the true victory. This is the path to lasting transformation. Bad habits are not flaws to fix, but assumptions you once accepted. Neville Goddard taught, "Persist in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and it will become fact." Today, you have seen that habits endure not through willpower but through identity, and that changing your assumptions rewrites your behavior naturally. You now hold 5 strategies to support this change. Reshape your environment, prepare conscious responses, substitute wisely, stack new habits, and pause to remember who you truly are. Relapse is not failure. It is simply a reminder to return swiftly to your chosen state. The work is simple. Assume now the feeling of your fulfilled desire. Let loyalty to your vision outweigh appearances. Feel yourself to be already free, already changed. There is nothing you must defeat. Only a truth you must dare to accept. You already are the self you seek to become. Persist, and the world must conform. Before you go, there is something important waiting for you. Check the pinned comment. It may be the reminder, the shift, or the spark you did not even know you were seeking.